It's Sunday, the 5th of February. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel. And yesterday we had another very near miss in Austin, Texas, between a Southwest 737 and a FedEx 767. This loss of separation while on final, it does happen, but there's something different about this episode that makes it special, and it's this radio call right here. The initial contact from FedEx.
Austin Tower, FedEx 1432 Heavy, passing 5.4 for the Cat 3 ILS 18 left.
That changes everything. Let's get into it. Starting with Simon Radecki's Aviation Herald, a FedEx Federal Express Boeing 767-300, November 297 Foxtrot Echo, performing flight as FedEx 1432 from Memphis, Tennessee to Austin, Texas, was on final for the Cat 3 ILS approach to Austin's runway 18 left, and was cleared to land on runway 18 left with the RVR, or runway visual range, at 1,400 feet of visibility, foggy conditions. The midpoint of the runway, the middle of the runway, is reporting 600 feet RVR. That's right down to minimums for this Cat 3 approach at Austin. And the rollout RVR on the far end of the runway is 1,800 feet of visibility. The tower also informed the crew that the Boeing 737 would depart prior to their arrival. Cat 3 landing means this is a Category 3 autoland on behalf of the FedEx 767. This changes everything about this near miss. There should have never been a 737 in front of this 767 getting ready to take off. The Southwest 737 is clearly inside the ILS critical area for this autoland approach. The instrument landing system, which provides vertical and horizontal azimuth, as well as radar altimeter readings to the ground, is going to automatically land the aircraft. And this signal will be interfered with by if there is another aircraft on the runway as it is approaching to land. But more importantly than that, as a FO on operating on these airliner aircraft, it is my job to not look outside. I cannot look outside on an autoland. I am glued to the gauges. My job as the FO, first off, a Category 3 autoland is always performed by the captain, even though the autopilot does the actual landing. And it is the FO's job to monitor the gauges, and at the moment anything pops up or there's any deviation from on the glide slope or on the localizer, or on the radar altimeter, or if any other lights come on, I have one simple job to do, and that's to say, go around. There's nothing to look at outside. You're making a low visibility landing, so if somebody is out there in front of you, as the FO, I couldn't even tell him if there was an aircraft out there. I wouldn't even be able to see it. I'm locked into the gauges for a Cat 3 autoland. This is why it's so critical that there should never have been an aircraft cleared to take off in front of the aircraft landing doing an auto landing. The captain also is focused in on the gauges and monitoring the entire situation with his hand guarding the go-around throttle, and he is ready to initiate a go-around at a moment's notice. But we're looking at the instruments. We're not looking down the runway. Once we do finally touch down and land, we are then only able to see the runway centerline lights as they flash by, and again, as FO, it's my job to make sure that that aircraft remains on that center line and does not deviate it from it. If it does, my only other job is to shout out center line. At that point, the pilot clicks off the autopilot and corrects the aircraft back onto the center line. But we're looking down the runway. We would not, again, be able to see an aircraft that is right on the numbers of the runway, right below you. Fortunately, FedEx had the situational awareness to know that, hey, wait a minute, Austin just cleared an aircraft to take off in front of us. Is that aircraft clear of the runway yet? And that brings up the question to all the rest of us, would you be willing to accept a Category 3 autoland approach clearance knowing that somebody has been cleared to take off in front of you? Or would you assume that that aircraft would be out of your way in time to make your autoland? Okay, now that I got my helmet fire put out, let me proceed with the rest of the story here. About 4 minutes after the 767 was cleared to land, 4 minutes, a Southwest Airlines Boeing 737-700, registration November 7827 Alpha, performing flight as Southwest 708 from Austin to Cancun, reported holding short of runway 18 left, the same runway, for departure, and was cleared for takeoff from runway 18 left. Tower advised the heavy Boeing 767 that Boeing 767 was on a 3-mile final. Tower queried about 30 seconds later whether they, the Southwest 737, were on the takeoff roll, which begs the question, can the tower even see the 737? What kind of equipment does Austin's tower have in these low visibility conditions to see aircraft movement on the ground? The crew confirmed they were rolling now. Another 25 seconds later, someone advised Southwest abort, the FedEx was on the go-around. That was the FedEx pilot. Tower acknowledged and instructed the 737 to turn right when able. However, the 737 continued takeoff and after liftoff went off the extended runway centerline to the right, climbed out. Subsequently, Tower instructed them, the Southwest Airlines, to turn left and handed them off to departure. You'll see that they got separation eventually. Once the go-around was initiated, the FedEx aircraft turned to the left, to the east, and then the Southwest aircraft initially turned a little bit to the right and then to the south. The 767 initiated a go-around from about 150 feet above the ground, about 1,000 feet short of the runway threshold. Climbed to 3,000 feet MSL, overflew the runway, turned for the left downwind, positioned for another approach, and landed 18 left without further incident about 11 minutes after the go-around. The NTSB announced that the NTSB is investigating a surface event at the Austrian Bergstrom International Airport Saturday, a possible runway incursion, and overflight involving airplanes from Southwest and FedEx. Fortunately, the FAA and the FedEx are jumping in light of the recent news from JFK. FAA and NTSB are jumping on this and hopefully are capturing the perishable data before it gets away from them. And here's a readout of the METAR, or the weather, near the time of the incident. No wind, 1/8 of a mile, statute mile of visibility. Let's see, runway 36 right. We're talking 18 left. Runway 36 right, 1,800 feet of visibility, variable to 2,400 feet. Freezing fog, vertical visibility of just 200 feet. So they're not even going to break out of the fog until 200 feet. And at 150 feet, somebody, thank goodness, saw the 737. Somebody on board the FedEx aircraft saw the 737 in the way and initiated the go-around at 150 feet above the ground. Here's a good example at night of what it looks like on very, very short final on a good day flying a autoland approach and landing, or a good night. By matter of review, here's a quick review of the ILS, or instrument landing system. There's a glide slope transmitter located just off to the side of the runway at about the point where you want the aircraft to touch down at, giving you vertical guidance to the runway. And then there is a localizer antenna located off the end of the runway and an array of antennas going across the runway that's giving you lateral guidance. And then you're working also with the radar altimeter to give you the exact altitude above the ground to facilitate the auto-land system for the aircraft. If any of these antennas are interfered with, particularly this glide slope antenna by another aircraft, you're going to foul up the whole system and force the other aircraft to go around. The ILS protection area is supposed to be protected by a set of double bar lines that looks like this, not to be confused with the runway hold short markings. Here in the Airman's Information Manual is the runway hold short markings versus the ILS critical area markings. Zooming in now on Austin's runway 18 left where this incident occurred, it appears to me that the glide slope antenna is located right here, which is right about the point you want the aircraft to touch down on an auto landing. You don't want them to touch down on the numbers. You want them to touch down right about here down the runway. And on this side of the runway, there is a ILS hold or critical area marking right here to keep this ILS antenna clear, or the glide slope antenna clear. But on the left side of the runway where the Southwest came from, I do not see any ILS critical area markings. And I assume it's because the glide slope antenna is located on this side of the runway. So I'm assuming that the entire glide slope or ILS critical area encompasses this area from these runway hold short markings to the ILS critical area markings way over here. Now let's have a preliminary run through of the ATC audio.
Austin Tower, FedEx 1432 Heavy, passing 5.4 for the Cat 3 ILS 18 left.
FedEx 1432 Heavy, Austin Tower, 18 left, RVR, touchdown 1,400, midpoint 600, roll out 1,800, 18 left, clear to land.
Clear to land, 18 left, FedEx 1432 Heavy.
Okay, he's cleared to land. The controller is required to give him the transmissometer readings. That's the visibility of the down the runway between at the beginning and middle and end point of the runway, and it indicates to everybody that the approach minimums are acceptable. The weather is acceptable for this approach. Let's take a quick look at this approach plate, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here's an out-of-date ILS runway 18 left approach plate for the runway that we're talking about here. Category 3 ILS down here in the lower right-hand corner. The only requirement is RVR of 600 feet. So that read-off of the RVRs indicated that the visibility was at or above 600 feet by all three transmissometers. Now, there's several other rules that apply, but basically, everybody knows that, okay, we've got the minimum visibility to shoot this approach. We are legal to fly this approach. Special air crew and aircraft certification required, yeah. The crew's got to be current and qualified on Cat 3 approaches. The aircraft has to be basically current and qualified and proven within the last so many days that it can do an appropriate auto land. And the airport and the lighting system all has to be approved for an airport for a Category 3 landing. That does not include having an aircraft in the middle of the ILS critical area, like a 737. Now note too, for a Category 3 auto land, there is no decision altitude, there's no MDA, there's at no point do you ever need to even see the runway. Now how are you going to be able to avoid a collision if you can't even see the runway and there's an aircraft right there in front of you? All right, back to the ATC audio.
Tower, Southwest 708, we're short of 18 left, we're ready.
Southwest 708, Austin Tower, runway 18 left, RVR 1,200, midpoint 600, roll out 1,600. Flight heading 170, runway 18 left, clear for takeoff, traffic 3 mile final is a heavy 767.
Okay, 170, clear for takeoff, 18 left, copy the traffic, Southwest 708.
Okay, everybody knows what's going on here. The FedEx guy is still 3 miles out. Everybody's assuming the Southwest is going to depart right away. But still, he's put the Southwest jet in the ILS critical area when he shouldn't be.
Tower, confirm FedEx 1432 Heavy clear to land on 18 left.
FedEx 1432 Heavy, that is affirmative, sir. 18 left, you are clear to land. Traffic departing prior to route 737.
Roger.
Okay, FedEx can't believe it. Are we still cleared to land for 18 left, even though you just put somebody on the runway in front of us? At this point, you might want to consider going around and resetting up for another Category 3 ILS. By the way, these audio tapes are not in real time. They've been edited for brevity. The NTSB and FAA will be putting all of this together in real time along with the flight-aware data, ADSB data, of how this is all going to go down.
Southwest 70, confirm on the road.
Rolling now.
That begs the question, can the tower even see Southwest? What are the facilities like at the Austin Tower?
Southwest aboard. FedEx is on the go.
Okay, did you hear that voice? That was not the tower. The tower has lost control of the situation. That was FedEx realizing what's happened and is directing the Southwest aircraft to abort. But Southwest is already moving down the runway. FedEx has no idea how fast Southwest is going. They may very well be already past their V1 speed.
Southwest aboard. FedEx is on the go.
Southwest 708, roger. You can turn right when able.
Negative.
Okay, that was Southwest saying negative. I don't know if they're saying negative to the abort or negative to the turn, that they don't want to turn so low to the ground in these IMC conditions. They want to get up to their 400 feet or so in these kind of low visibility conditions before they start their turn. A very tight situation. Separation about, at this point, estimated to be about 150 feet. The altitudes that you see on the Flight Radar 24 track, they're just very coarse ADSB altitudes and do not give a clear understanding of just how close this was.
Negative.
FedEx 1432, climb maintain 3000. When able, you can turn left heading 080.
Wind turn to 080 3000. FedEx 1432 Heavy.
Southwest 70, you can turn left heading 170.
17779.
FedEx 1432, turn left heading 360. Contact approach on the 125.32.
2532 left 360. FedEx 1432 Heavy.
So they got the Southwest jet vectored heading south, and they got the FedEx aircraft on a left downwind heading north.
I'm sorry, who was that? Southwest 70, you can contact departure.
7086.
Tower, FedEx 1432 Heavies on the ILS 18 left.
FedEx 1432 Heavy, Austin Tower, runway 18 left, RVR, touchdown 800, midpoint 800, rollout 1200, 18 left, clear to land.
Clear to land, 18 left, FedEx 1432 Heavy.
So they cleared the FedEx for his second approach and landing. He lands uneventfully, and the controller does apologize to FedEx and thanks him for his professionalism. Here's a view that somebody captured from Flight Radar 24 overlay of how this played out. But again, these altitudes are very coarse data at this point. But initial reports seem to indicate that the separation, the vertical separation of these two aircraft was about 150 feet. And then the Southwest sachets over to the right, and then FedEx to the left. Here's a playback of FedEx 1432. Again, this calibrated altitude is a combination of different altitudes, so it's not terribly accurate, but it's supposed to represent close to mean sea level. But as we saw on the approach plate, the altitude of the airport is 492 feet at the touchdown zone elevation. So he's getting lined up for the straight-in ILS autoland approach. By the way, we are required to autoland when the visibility is this low. We are not allowed to hand fly any portion of an instrument approach when the visibility is this low. And it works out good because usually when the visibility is this low, there's very little or no wind, like the situation here. It's too foggy. So calibrated altitudes coming down to 400, 200, 100, there goes 75 feet was the lowest calibrated altitude. Well, if that's supposed to be MSL, that doesn't add up correctly because the field elevation at Austin is what it is. The neat thing about Flight Radar 24 is they're already looking into this themselves and have posted on their blog this close call, and they've processed some of the data here. And this graphic here shows about how close this got. An ADSB altitude of 75 feet by the FedEx aircraft over the numbers of runway 18 at this time, 12:40:31, and at between 12:40:30 and 12:40:32, the Southwest aircraft is located right down here on the runway on their takeoff roll. So within about the same second of each other in time. And they're accelerating through 66 and 74 knots. These sort of incidents are increasing at an alarming rate. There's a huge turnover in the industry, not only amongst pilots, but amongst air traffic controllers, mechanics, maintainers, rampers. And with the state of hiring practices and training today and the relentless effort to do things faster, cheaper, and more efficiently, we're just one radio call away from having the biggest aviation disaster in history. Be careful. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you for your support, especially the folks over on Patreon. See you here.